So you mean whatever's in my body is in my life. Whatever's not working in my life, I can point to and find a place where I have an excessive, relative, and reflective amount of tension and stress stored in that particular part of my body.
Welcome to the Wits and Weights podcast. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and this twice-a-week podcast is dedicated to helping you achieve physical self-mastery by getting stronger, optimizing your nutrition, and upgrading your body composition. We'll uncover science-backed strategies for movement, metabolism, muscle, and mindset with a skeptical eye on the fitness industry so you can look and feel your absolute best. Let's dive right in. Welcome to another episode of Wits and Weights. On today's show, we dive deep into the topic of stress and its connection to emotion, physiology, physical pain, and trauma. We explore the concept of Strauma and how it affects your well-being. We also discuss the difference between stress management and stress resolution and explore the effectiveness of stress management tools so you can transition from a state of struggle and strife to one of ease and grace. My guest today is Christopher Lee Maher, an author, inventor, entrepreneur, speaker, coach, and innovator in the fields of health, wellness, and longevity. And he's going to share his perspective on those topics and more as we get into our conversation. At 22, Christopher was a Navy SEAL in his prime with a sleek 1.8% body fat and one of the fittest people on the planet. He was also completely unaware of the full impact that stress would eventually have on his physical, mental, energetic, and emotional well-being. His internal health was compromised and he didn't even know it. He suffered from pain in every joint, his hearing was shot, and his vision was poor. Christopher realized that piled up stress, which he calls Strauma, transforms into trauma over time and causes severe damage. Christopher devoted his energy, time, and resources seeking answers to alleviate his discomfort and eventually developed True Body Intelligence technology, a comprehensive system of total physical, mental, emotional, spiritual healing, and integration. With his help, Christopher's clients have succeeded at the highest levels in sports, entertainment, business, medicine, and international politics. Christopher, I'm delighted to have you on and your unique perspective on the show today.
Thank you. Dude, that was the best intro I've had so far. And I've done a bunch of podcasts.
That's what I strive for, man. It's all about, showing you
have
the best
done
life.
Your homework.
Cool.
You are detailed.
Cool. Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. No, it's well-deserved. People need to know who you are, and I want to set up for the conversation so we know what we're getting into. Okay. And yeah, so your background's very eclectic, I would say. You were a Navy SEAL. You have experience with Chinese medicine. You have an approach to stress management that sounds very unique. Yeah. So of all of your life experiences, what were the pivotal moments that you think shaped who you are today?
I mean, there's a lot, right? There's one that sticks out the most for me. And I was driving from my girlfriend's place to teach a class on a Wednesday night in July. And this is some years ago. So this would be 1999 or 2000? So either 1999 or 2000. And I'm driving. It's a green light, moving through the green light slowly, and out of nowhere, a car comes through the intersection and slams into my car. Spins the car around, the car hits a light pole so hard, then it spins back the other way. I go to the hospital, and the next day when I wake up, pain has now shifted from outside of my hip to the middle of my hip. And now I can no longer override things with my will, right? You can imagine you go through SEAL training, you're a Navy SEAL. It would be assumed that the person has an intense, indomitable will. And I definitely had one of those. And then I had an ice pick in my hip, throbbing every 2 to 3 seconds. And when you have that kind of unrelenting discomfort, you're eventually going to break your strategies. And my strategy at the time was emotional self-reliance. So if I was in pain, you wouldn't know about it because guess what? I was indoctrinated to never bitch, moan, complain, or whine. I went to boarding school for 10 years. that was involuntary, just so everybody knows. I didn't want to go to boarding school. So my grandmother sent me. And then I volunteered for the military and to go to SEAL training, being a SEAL team. So now that was voluntary discipline. So when you're signing up for something, there is, and you know that you're the one who signed up, there is some ownership in that, right? So I took responsibility for my pain psychologically, mentally. Like, well, you put yourself through all that.
Sure.
Don't complain to anyone. You did it. You should have investigated. Like, why didn't you get to Coronado, meet a bunch of guys that used to be in the SEAL teams and ask them, how's your body working? Because if you did, you would have thought to yourself, yeah, do I want to feel like hell at 40, at 44, at 45, at 55 years old? No, I don't. And maybe I would have made a different decision. So I didn't do my homework. And I ended up with a body full of intense amounts of stress. And look, their job is to stress you out, right? Because they need to know something. Does this guy make good decisions when he's cold, wet, and miserable? Now think about that. Does this guy make good, solid decisions when he's cold, wet, and miserable? Anybody can make a good decision on a bright, sunny, warm day.
Yeah.
Okay. So I understand the process. But what I didn't account for is all the childhood stress that I dealt with in the childhood trauma. I had a mother who committed suicide when she was 29. What does that let us know? She was mentally and emotionally unwell. Okay. Her father died of cirrhosis of the liver. What does that let us know? He was mentally and emotionally unwell. Okay. Now I'm the next generation. And by the time I'm my mother's age, 29 years old, I have a body riddled full of pain. What should that have told me? He's mentally and emotionally unwell. I didn't put that together, right? Because I associated all the discomfort that I was in with my desire and passion to be fit, right? And to prove myself. And my goal at the time was to qualify for the Olympic trials. It was never going to happen. I had the will. I didn't have the body. I had the will. I didn't have the mind. I had the will. I didn't have the emotions. Okay. Because I had fragmented and overstressed myself so much that I was stuck in a state of Strauma. And when I say Strauma, what I mean is stress plus time, right? So you take unresolved stress plus time equals Strauma. What does that mean? If I'm driving down the road and I fall asleep at the wheel and I run into a telephone pole, that's blunt force trauma, right? It happens in the moment. But Strauma is what all humans are dealing with that are in their 30s, their 40s, and their 50s. And what it is it's stress that is unresolved in a 24-hour period that gets piled into the next day. So Monday's stress ends up in Friday. And then Friday ends up in next Friday. And then January ends up in March. And then March ends up in August. And, do that for 2 or 3 decades consistently. And eventually you're going to bend down to tie your shoe. Okay. And you're going to go to get up and your back's going to go pop. And you're going to go, oh my God, Susie, honey, call the doc. I can't move. What are you talking about, Bill? My back. I can't move. Well, you look normal. Can you just call 911? I need to get someone here. Honey, I can't move. Now, are you supposed to get injured when you bend over to tie your shoe? No, of course you're not. But if you have an intense amount of unresolved stress, trauma, tension, and distortion, it's eventually going to happen. So anyone who's listening, trust me, if you do not deal with, or let's say it another different way, if you continue to avoid removing and diminishing your lifetime accumulated stress load and the trauma that's in your system, the daily accumulated stress that got piled on day after day, eventually one day you're going to wake up and you're going to have some kind of pain. And whether that's an unrelenting toothache, you're starting to lose your vision, you're turning into an insomniac, It's impossible for you to fall asleep. It's difficult for you to stay asleep. You're getting up and urinating 5 or 6 times a night. You've got these intense menstrual cramps. You're having involuntary abortions. Okay. The miscarriages are now creating a lot of emotional stress for you. You're super talented. You're super smart, but the amount of money that you're being paid for the work that you're doing is unfair and inequitable. Like there's 100 ways in which Strauma affects you, right? You got unrelenting headaches. And guess what? They start out very small, right? Like, oh, I got this little weird pain in my head. It lasted for an hour. Decade later, it lasts a whole day. 2 decades later, now you have them twice a week. 3 decades later, now they're full-blown migraines that last 3 or 4 days, right?
No, go ahead.
So when you have this type of stress, and everyone has it, like, let's be clear, anyone who's listening right now is full of a massive amount of stress, tension, distortion, and Strauma. I've done 100,000 hours of research, right? So they tell you in order to master any one thing, it takes 10,000 hours, right? I've done 100,000. That's 10 of those. So I wouldn't be a master of something. I would be a grandmaster, right? So when it comes to this field of study and the information I've given you, it has been tested and tried again and again and again and again. And whether someone's 7 or they're 77, you know what? They have the same amount of stress and tension in their body, in the health of their tissues.
Yeah, this concept is, I wouldn't have believed it when I was younger, and having gone through some of the experiences I have and having dealt with back pain and then when that happened, talk to other people, some of who were able to deal with those issues by resolving some emotional stress and dealing with that side of it without any other interventions. It totally makes sense for me. And the way you describe that whole process of accumulated stress, and I've heard accumulated load, makes us realize that the accumulation is part of the relevance here, right? We're talking years and years. It's not just something you can fix overnight necessarily. It's also not just a physical thing. Like I think a lot of people think, well, I'm unhealthy, so I get all my lifestyle practices in order from a physical perspective, which I help clients do, but that's not all of it, right? And even the stress piece of it, I don't think a lot of people give it as much attention or depth as you're, I think, already starting to dive into here. Which then should lead to, that understanding should lead to, what can we potentially do about it, right? Which is what people can gain from this. So you talked about the Navy SEALs. Just real quick on that. I have heard how, Navy SEALs use stress as a motivator. They turn stress from a negative into a positive. Is that some sort of rationalization going on there? Or is that a true thing for a certain subset of those guys that maybe don't already have the previous stress? I mean, help me understand that.
Yeah, I mean, eventually the law of diminishing returns will turn on. Okay. The body can only potentially hold so much tension, stress, and distortion. And we use stress in the beginning to strengthen the mind, right? And then the mind gets really strong. But when the mind becomes so strong that it ignores the physical needs, the emotional needs, and the psychological needs of the body and of the person's life, eventually you will turn a win into a loss. Okay, so that mindset's great. Take that mindset, go through things that are difficult so you can build your will to achieve the things that you want to experience. Once you've experienced the things that you want to experience, and you need to keep having those experiences to validate who you are, now you're in trouble. Because at some point, you're going to go over the edge of what your body can recover from. And if you do more than what your body can recover from, you're now creating damage. And why would anyone show up and knowingly put damage in their body The only reason why they would continue to do that is if their identity was attached to their achievement. Okay. And that's what I mean by you take a win and you turn it into a loss, right? And so the thing about it is humans are in this very unique place where now we get to test everything, right?
Mm-hmm. We
can go into a sauna and be in there for 30 minutes, come out for 10 minutes and go in cold water, go back in for 30 minutes, right? And then we can withdraw some blood, send it to the lab and see that we've increased our human growth hormone by 36%, right? So we can test and we can evaluate. If you're someone who's into fitness and wellness and you want to push the edge because you want to learn about what's a healthy, functional state of being, wonderful. But when you go too far and now you have excruciating joint pain, okay, to attempt to prove your philosophy, and what it's doing is it's reducing your body's ability to heal because you're lowering your restore, repair, and recovery rate for the purpose of elevating your ego. Mm-hmm. Now, instead of having a win-loss, you now have a loss-loss.
Sure.
And so the question is, for me, for the listener is, do you want to do things that are rational or irrational? In the beginning, the things that you're going to be doing are irrational because your body's never done them before. But then any good thing that you do, like vitamin C is great. If you have too much, it becomes a problem. Juicing is wonderful. If you juice too much, it's a problem. Steak is great. If you eat too much, it's a problem. Sleep is wonderful. But if you sleep too much, it's a problem. Sex is awesome. But if you have too much, it becomes a problem. And so the thing is knowing your threshold, right? And we're at this place in time where we get to decide how we want to grow. I want to be more emotionally present. Great. There's a course somewhere on the internet. Okay. I want to have a more loving relationship with my wife and be a better communicator. There's a course somewhere on the internet, right? There's people out there like you. There's people out there like me that are coming together, having powerful conversations so that people like the listeners can tune in and they can learn something valuable that they can implement, right? They can extract and put it into their life. Test it out. Take it to its edge. See what the result is. If the result is dysfunction, then your choice is dysfunctional, right? Never ignore the data. Always collect the data. So I think that CLT mindset is wonderful to a point. Okay. I'm not going to put 50 pounds of sand in my rucksack, in my backpack and run down the beach because I know for 15 miles, because I know at some point I'm wearing away at the joints in my low back. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, hey, maybe I throw 50 pounds on and I run for a mile and I do that once a week, once every 2 weeks. You got to know your body and you've got to pay attention to the signals. And pain is always the last indicator that something is wrong. So when you have a little pain in your shoulder, it's not a little pain. It's a big problem. And this is the thing that most people don't understand, that I understand too well because I was someone that continued to keep pushing the edge. And so now I know to listen to the signpost on the side of the road that says, slow down, okay, curb, go 15 miles an hour. When I was 19, I might go 60, right?
For sure.
Okay. All right. Now that I'm moving towards 60, maybe I go 30 because that's who I am, right? I'm always going to want to push the edge a little bit.
Right. Yeah. And pushing that edge a little, as you alluded to, it's a form of, I think the term is hormesis, right? It's like that acute stress that is beneficial as humans. You mentioned the sauna and other things like that, where there's a short-term stressor that leads to some benefits down the road, unless you do it too much or too hard. And I was thinking of the stress recovery adaptation model of lifting as well, how you can accumulate too much fatigue and continue to push yourself and never give yourself that chance to recover. And you also mentioned the shoulder pain, which I've had and I totally can empathize with the idea of, hey, it's just a little pain, push through it. And now all of a sudden pop and you make it worse.
Yeah.
You should have just, and the pain, like you said, isn't even the first signal. There's other signals before that, that your body's telling you. Okay. So this is great stuff. What about, so you mentioned voluntary hardship, and the transition from a state of struggle to one of ease and grace. I want to understand that phrase and that thought, right?
Yeah.
People want to be stoic. We talk about this whole concept you said with the Navy SEALs, kind of taking it to the extreme of just sucking it up, and it's going to make you a better person, but you're saying don't keep doing that forever. So when life is constantly pushing back on you, how can someone do that? How can they transition to a life of ease, as you call it?
Okay. I mean, one, they need to understand the model, right? Like, how do we get stress first? We have to have a rudimentary base understanding of how we get to pain. And so anytime someone has a symptom, right? Most of your people in the fitness and wellness, so they're running along and no, this is better. They're playing tennis, right? With their girlfriends. Then they're going to go out in the afternoon and lay in the sun, and they're whacking balls back and forth. They're doing backhands, forehands. And then the girl wakes up the next day and her back's like incredibly stiff. She can be stoic, okay? And she can pretend like, I'm okay. I just need a few days. And the swelling will go down. The truth is, yeah, the swelling will go down and the discomfort will disappear. But what she's not thinking about is this. You should be able to go and play tennis. And if you wake up the next day and your back hurts, it means that there's something wrong with your back. You should be able to knock balls for an hour or two across the net, have a nice time, wailing away at these balls. If you wake up and you've got excessive swelling and a stiff low back the next day, you need to go, would a healthy structural person be having this discomfort? And the moment you ask that question and you include healthy, what you're going to get is absolutely not. A healthy person should be able to knock balls around for an hour or two and wake up the next day and be totally fine. The challenge is this. People have symptoms and they don't know where the symptoms come from. So you alluded to this idea earlier that people have physical pain, stiffness in their low back that are connected to emotional, unresolved challenges from their childhood when their minds were in a precognitive state of function. What does it mean when we say a mind is in a precognitive state of function? What we mean, listeners, is this person doesn't understand context. Children don't understand context. Right. Okay. They understand, oh, this lollipop, it's sweet. I like the taste. They don't know who made the lollipop. They don't know how it's made. They don't even understand that mom had to go to the grocery store to get it. They don't know that dad had to earn money to buy it. They have no clue. All they know is this thing in my mouth tastes sweet. I like it. My mom didn't give it to me. Now I'm upset. Okay. Now here's the thing. When a woman or a man that's playing tennis, knocking balls back and forth across the net for an hour or two, wakes up the next day and they have pain in their low back, it always, I could say that 100 times, always is related back to something that's unresolved emotionally. And if you know what emotions go through the middle of the legs, right? All circumduction in the body is controlled by the function of your liver and the function of your gallbladder. And if you know that the function of the liver, its high function is freedom, helpfulness, and the seat of emotion, and you know the gallbladder is the center for decisiveness and devotion, Well, if I have pain in my back after playing tennis, which requires an intense amount of circumduction, what's the opposite to feeling free? Oh, repression. What's the opposite to being decisive? Indecisive. And now I look back over my life and I go, wow, that's so funny. When all my friends sit down for lunch, I'm always the last one to be able to figure out what to order because I'm indecisive, right? Whenever I go out with my friends and they start having these conversations about things that I'm uncomfortable with, I never say anything because I want people to like me. So then I close off my throat and I repress my real feelings. Okay. So the way that someone's functioning emotionally and psychologically is what leads to the physiological and structural pain and discomfort. And if you know what each part of the body is related to emotionally, energetically, psychologically, and instinctually, you now have a game plan. So now that girl, she knows someone who knows me, and they go, hey, look, you need to go have a conversation with Christopher. What? Yeah, you need to go have a conversation with Christopher. Okay. She gets my number. She sends me a text. Hey, listen, I was playing tennis. It happens every time that I do this. How do I resolve this? I just ask a couple simple questions. How indecisive are you when you sit down to order food? Oh, always. They always give me the same answers. What I mean by that is whatever's in your body is in your life. If something is distorted in your body, there's something distorted in terms of your behavior in your life. Well, what's the only thing that can distort behavior? Excessive, unresolved stress and tension. So if I remove the tension and I remove the stress, instead of being indecisive, I'm decisive. Instead of feeling repressed and suppressed, I feel free to communicate my ideas and my feelings and my emotions to those around me. And now that I'm decisive and free, when I go to play tennis, the next time I wake up in the morning, guess what? No back pain. That's curious. Oh, so you mean whatever's in my body is in my life. Whatever's not working in my life, I can point to and find a place where I have an excessive, relative, and reflective amount of tension and stress stored in that particular part of my body.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to explore this more. And I'm sure the listener's thinking, okay, how do you do that? Well, I mean, so my skepticism here is always get up with everything. It's just how I am.
That's great.
And that's cool. And actually I wanted to explore like the Chinese medicine and Eastern versus not versus, but complementarity with Western principles. But let's take that one example of the woman playing tennis with the low back pain a lot of people get low back pain. Are we saying they're all indecisive, or is it the way that they describe that pain to you gives you that indication of what to ask?
Yeah, what we're saying is because I know her activity and she was playing tennis, and that means that she was rotating, she was twisting. I know that the pain is coming from the inability to circumduct correctly.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. And then what would happen next when you said, okay, well, you're not indecisive? People who are indecisive, and I know some in my own life, are like, how do I become decisive?
How do you become decisive? You become decisive by removing the stress out of that channel. So you brought up, which was perfect timing, the concept of traditional Chinese medicine. So the Chinese have mapped out the body in terms of lines of energy that move through the body. They're called meridians or channels, right? So you have 12 primary channels. You have 4 extraordinary channels. Every one of these channels moves through the belly of a muscle, literally right through the belly of the muscle. The Chinese, they studied energy. They didn't study anatomy, right? That's not how they came up with traditional Chinese medicine. They studied the energy in the body. Well, guess what happened? Guess what else is right below that meridian? A nerve. So the body's been mapped out, right? It has very specific ways in which it functions. And when you know those ways that it functions, it allows you to then see the roadmap and then reverse engineer the problem. And once you can reverse engineer the problem, and then I take it a step further, I teach the person how to do it so they're not relying on me. Why? Because I'm allergic to codependent relationships.
Sure. Yeah. I can buy that.
Why?
Talk my language.
You understand it. You're a self-empowered man. You know that if you have someone who you're imparting wisdom and knowledge into their life, and you're showing them how to do it on their own, eventually one day you want them to disappear, right?
That's right.
So
I want them to fire me as a coach, is how I put it sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, come on, look, I hope you're only here for 3 months. So then you can go away and the next person can come in.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Before my coaching session with Philip, I was really struggling with staying consistent with my nutrition. Philip really showed me the importance of being consistent day to day. He also helped me see that it's not a bad thing to take a rest day. He really helped me get in that more positive headspace of a rest day being something really good for me. I've been doing this for a month now, and I'm finally starting to see some progress in my numbers, and I'm really excited about that. And I just appreciate so much the help that Philip has given me. He's always willing to answer questions, to offer resources that are totally free and very, very helpful. So I just want to say how much I appreciate that. Thanks, Philip.
For all the listeners on the call now, in order to empower yourself, you need to understand some very, very simple, basic things in the body. You need to understand fascia, how fascia works. You need to understand how your muscles work, the names of those muscles. You need to understand the organs that are connected to those muscles. Because see, when the nerves leave your spinal cord, they go into an organ, and then they leave an organ, and where do they go? They go into a muscle. So whatever's going into my muscles is going on in my organs. Whatever's going on in my organs is going on in my nervous system. Whatever's going on in my nervous system is going on in my brain. Mm-hmm. Whatever's going on in my brain is going on in the soles of my feet. That's the map. Once you understand that map, you're like, oh, wow, I'm having some digestive issues. Oh, you are? This is interesting. Okay. Now I know which meridian goes through which muscle. They say, oh, I'm dealing with a lot of bloating. Okay, I got you covered. Let's push around a little bit. Oh, sure enough, there's pain right where it should be. We remove the discomfort. Come in the next week. How's your bloating? Oh, I'm not bloated at all. Easy. But without understanding and knowing the map, see, before the only map I had was fitness. Go hard all day, every day, all the time. I accumulated so much stress in my structural body, it started to affect the way that my systemic organs were working. Every one of your organs is connected to a sense organ. So let me go again. Every one of your organs, like your liver, your lungs, your large intestine, your spleen, your stomach, your pancreas, your kidneys, your bladder, your brain, your sexual organ, every one of them is connected to a sense organ. So when my systemic organs are being stressed out by my structural tissues because they're so tight and toxic, now my sense organs suffer. Guess what I start losing? I start losing my vision. I start losing my hearing. I start losing my smell. I start losing my taste. Okay? So when they say everything is connected, they literally mean everything is connected. So whatever's going on the sole of my feet is an indication of how well my organs communicate together. If my organs have really good communication, my body's relaxed. But if my body's stressed in a reflective and relative manner, so are my organs. And if my organs and my structural tissues are stressed, now my sense organs are stressed. And once they're stressed, and you start losing vision, you start losing hearing, you start getting very stressed because you're not picking up the information and the data that you need in order to be successful. When you get in your car and you want to go to the grocery store, you want to get from A to B. Okay, you don't want to get halfway down the hill and then suddenly half your vision drops out of one eye because you're severely overstressed. So unresolved stress manifests this tension. Tension creates structural distortion. Structural distortion transforms into physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual pain. What is spiritual pain? It means I have an ineffectual amount of energy to do the things that I desire, and I'm unable to be ethical, moral, principled, and be integrous. That means I'm spiritually sick. Okay. Then there's emotional pain. What is emotional pain? Anxiety. Okay. I'm depressed. I'm feeling hopeless. I'm feeling repression and suppression. I'm finding it difficult to connect with others. Now, I know I'm emotionally in pain. Well, when you're in physical pain, that's the easiest one. The easiest of them all. If you go in and you solve your physical pains, you solve your emotional, spiritual, and psychological pains simultaneously. So yeah, you can be fit and healthy, or you can be fit and unhealthy. And most people are fit, but they're unhealthy.
So it's funny because the human body is very complicated, very complex, and I think we have a hubris, and I see it the older I get in the medical community. I have less love for doctors than I used to, with certain things, especially when I see things like women's health and other areas that seem highly misunderstood or neglected or even worse. And you just put for me, I guess, in the first time that I've either been willing to listen or, hear it, what to me is actually a very logical set of relationships here in the body, because we still don't understand the brain as much as we could, or our nervous system. And when you first talked about meridians, I was thinking, okay, that's the analogy for our nervous system and how it all connects. And you kind of said as much, connected to the organs and the sense organs and everything else. And then even talking about spiritual pain, again, I'm like, okay, here we go. Spiritual, what do we mean by that? And you kind of grounded it in those things that people can relate to, of having that emotional and energetic deficiency, right? And not enough to give to others. They haven't even taken care of themselves. And then finally he said, look, if we can solve the physical pain, and I think what you mean is the root of the pain, right? Not just the symptom itself, that it's this whole chain of events between that emotional, spiritual. So hopefully I somewhat paraphrase what you just said, in the layman's term that I understand it right now. And I'm open-minded to this stuff. So I really want to understand, especially if someone can say, this information now empowers me to try something that I've maybe never tried before, that's still grounded in understanding my own body and listening to it. So this is very powerful stuff, Christopher, so far.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing for me. Thank you for that. I can't live in fantasy. Mm-hmm. I'm in my mid-50s, heading towards 60. I can't live in fantasy, man.
Yeah.
Like other people, you can live fantasy all you want. I have to be in reality. What does that mean? That means people show up at my door on Monday and they knock on my door. And I open the door and they come in and they sit down in the seat that I give them. I sit across from them and say, hey, why are you here? And they go, well, da 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 da. And then I have to go, why are you really here? What's your intention? And when they say that intention, I have to produce that result. So I don't have the ability to live in woo-woo. Do you understand me? I have to live in science. And what I mean is I have to produce a verifiable, repeatable, predictable outcome for them. And if I don't produce that, come Friday, they're going to be unhappy. And they're going to feel like I wasted their time, I wasted their energy, and I wasted their resources. So I can't fuck around in fantasy. So I had to figure this shit out quickly. And it had to be applicable to every single human on the planet. And so I dove in for 100,000 hours to produce something that does what it says and says what it does, because I can't afford to live in fantasy. Why? Because people are relying on me to give them good quality information, but also to produce a result that's beyond what they could have ever imagined. So every week, I got to pull a rabbit out of my ass.
Okay. Yeah.
Every week, I'm under that pressure. Yeah. And so, I'm in Montana right now, working with a lovely woman who put a knife through her hand, and she is suffering from some lack of movement and energy, and she wants things to work correctly. So I have to use everything that I know, and I've got to be willing to trust my instinct, okay? Be in alignment with her intent and nod, yes, I can help you, and then get the job done. The benefit of being in the SEAL teams is this for me. When I walked across the stage and they gave me my diploma, I knew I was my own man. I'd been through a rite of passage. What I learned to understand more about that experience is it gave me the confidence to know I can get the job done. So no matter what you bring to my table, I'm going to figure it out, right? The body is simple. It's very, 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 very simple. And if you do these very specific things, you are guaranteed to get this specific result. Why? Because this is how the body functions. And if you understand the math, you can reverse engineer any state of dis-ease. If you understand the math, and I went in to study the math. That's why I went to medical school. Okay. I went in there to study the math. I need to know the math. Once I understood the map and I started to create and produce systems that were reflective of the information in the map, I started to produce verifiable, repeatable results that were predictable. And so I am impassioned because people want to feel freedom. They want to feel happy. They want to feel joyful. They want to have their energy back. Okay? Because no one understood the map before. When I was a kid, nobody understood the map. If somebody understood the map, my mom would still be alive. If somebody understood the map, my grandfather might still be alive. Okay? But they didn't understand the map in the 60s. Right? And when I went into going into the SEAL teams and training for the Olympic trials and wanting to make my goal, I didn't know anything about the body. I just got up and I used it like a skateboard. Hey, take me over here. Hey, take me over there. I didn't realize that we were endowed with the Starship Enterprise. I thought we got a skateboard. So once I investigated into all of these different systems and I started to see these correlations, and then I started to implement strategies to neutralize the expressions of these different levels of dysfunction, it became really, really easy. And so I think what I want the listener to understand, it's very easy once you understand the map. Right now, most people have a map on how to get fit, how to get some more testosterone in their body, how to get a better night's sleep, what are the better foods to eat? How can they employ fasting to maintain a high state of alert, but also to reduce their body fat? They can learn all that stuff, right? And look, that stuff is great. But none of that will get you to understand the true map that you have. This body is so much more complex, okay? And it can achieve so much more than what we've been told, than what we know. I'm letting the listener know I figured out the map. I got it.
All right. So I think we're talking about your true body intelligence technology and in general, well, the principles behind that, right?
Yeah, the principles behind that.
The idea that someone can have agency is definitely appealing to everyone listening, right? Because we've gotten to a state, especially with the medical industry, where it's let's just fix whatever happened or try our best to fix it with pharmacology and with some sort of, Band-Aid after the fact. It's not only is it not preventative, which I know that they're trying to change that just minimally in the industry, it's not the full empowered control and knowledge of your body to change it. And I think people are definitely open to the idea of, I've had all these issues, I've gone to all these doctors, I've gone to all these specialists, whatever, still not working. There's got to be something else there, right?
Yeah.
If we don't know it in that scope of knowledge, the knowledge has to be somewhere. And maybe we don't know it at all. I know you're saying we know some of this, but regardless, people like the power over their body and their results. So what's a specific example? You've alluded to kind of the front end of this process, but how would somebody then do something here? What action would they take to improve their health and their outcomes using this approach?
Well, I mean, the first thing you'd have to learn is Bestersize. Okay. That without
Bestersize?
Right? Bestersize. Bestersize, exercise, right? Why we call it Bestersize? Because it's the best form of exercise. Why? Because it includes concentric, isometric, and eccentric contractions at maximal force.
Okay. Sounds like back squats, but
okay.
You tell me.
in tons of different dynamic positions.
Sure.
Okay. Why would we want to use Bestersize? Why? Because when you get into each one of these positions, each one of them affects a different organ. It affects a different sense organ. It affects a different muscle. Okay. It affects a different quality of energy. It gives you access to higher forms of intelligence. Why? Because the concentric contraction does what? It strengthens. We need strength. Okay. If you go to the bar, you need enough strength to pick up your beer. Okay. Right. If you're going to drive to the grocery store, you have to have enough strength to hold your keys. Sounds ridiculous. I know. But let's say you want to do something profound, right? Like you want to use your body to complete a marathon or a 10K. You've never done anything like that. You need strength in order to do it. But in order to maximize strength, you need to be able to recruit tissue. So in order to recruit new tissue that's been turned off, you have to use isometric contractions, because isometric contractions force you, in order to stay in that position another second longer, you need to recruit more tissue in order to be able to do it. And then that new tissue that you recruit, it needs to be what? It needs to be lengthened. So I got to strengthen, recruit a new fiber, now lengthen that new fiber, now strengthen that new fiber, now recruit another fiber, right? You can see the cycle. As you keep doing that, guess what happens? You're going to turn on the entire belly of the muscle, all the way out to the edge of where it connects into a tendon. Okay. Now I've got the whole thing fired up. Now all that intensity and that intent, all that energy in there, you know where it goes? It goes in and it feeds my organ. Which organ does it feed? It feeds the organ connected to the channel that goes right directly through the belly of that muscle.
That muscle belly. Yep.
In Chinese medicine, they call them tendomuscular channels. Okay. Now, boom, I've lit that up. And now the organ's being fed. And when I wake up the next day, I'm looking around for something to eat. I've got 5 choices in front of me. I picked the one that my body needs the most. You want to know why? Because now my organ is communicating to my brain and it's saying, hey, we got 5 choices here. We usually choose number 3. Actually, let's choose number 1. Why? Because I have more intelligence inside of my body. So what they're discovering in science right now, which I've known for at least 3 decades, is that we're surrounded by magnetic energy constantly. Here's the interesting thing about Bestersize. When you're in a position and you're performing concentric, then holding an isometric, and then maximal force for the eccentric, when you open that channel, now that universal magnetic energy gets sucked into your body. And now it starts filling up your organs with more energy. And when they have more energy, so do your sense organs. Now I can see better, I can hear better, I can smell better. Now, because I have more information, I can make a better decision. Okay? Now that I make a better decision, I have a better life. So whatever's in my body, is in my life. Whatever's missing in my body is also in my life. So when I'm low function, okay, I'm not attracted to high function. When I'm high function, I'm allergic to low function. So what do? You want to use Vestersize so that you can turn on all those high functions inside of you, and you can make amazing choices because your whole life is based on your decisions. Should I invest in real estate or should I invest in crypto? Should I invest in real estate or should I invest in crypto? Or should I take this money, invest it in my business? Invest it in my business, invest it in crypto, invest it in real estate. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to work on the muscles associated with decision making. I'm going to get into my gallbladder channel. I'm going to open that up. And now I'm going to pose that question again. And immediately you're going to go, oh, I'm going to invest in my business.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm letting you talk here because, you got good stuff. I mean, some of this stuff is blowing my mind, but there are definitely parallels of some of this, how I and others might describe them differently. Like your example of choosing the food for you is so true, because I see the mindlessness of many people when it comes to food on a regular basis. And yeah, oftentimes this additional movement and training and just physical interaction with the world that you've never had before, all of a sudden turn something on where now you could hear your body. You can hear what it's telling you to eat, how much to eat, what types of things. No, I don't want to eat that quote unquote junk food or candy or whatever it is that I used to eat because just my body's not telling me I want it. I can see that. So, but Vestersize, that's an interesting term. Would you categorize? I mean, are you basically talking about strength training in all its forms, or is there a specific one that you recommend the most?
No, it's getting into a position. So here's the great thing about the SEAL teams. SEAL teams, they teach you how to master your body through calisthenics.
Okay.
So they had the right idea, right? But they have limited positions and they left out the other two contractions.
Right.
So
and
they left out
right?
the isometric contraction and they left out the eccentric contraction, which is the most important. Why? Because it's 30 to 50% stronger. For every 100 pounds you can lift, you can lower 30 to 50% more weight.
Yep. Could always get down in my squat. I can't always come up. Yep.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
So if you put that to the test and you thought about every single muscle group in the body and you did the same thing, isometric, concentric, eccentric contractions at maximal force, right? Now you're going to open your body. And when you open your cavity, your rib cage and your shoulders, and structurally everything starts dropping into the right place. Why? Because now your bones are rotated in the correct position. When my bones are rotated in the correct positions, my heart has to spend less energy pushing blood around my body. So now, instead of having to go boom, 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 it can go boom, 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 boom. Or other people, boom, 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 boom. Why? Because they have this excessive amount of structural tension, stress, and distortion. I'm not talking about yoga. Okay. If you're into yoga, I'm not going to dog yoga, but this is not what we're talking about. Okay. I'm not talking about lengthability. I'm talking about flexibility. When they say flexibility, what's the first part of that word? Flex. Okay. What does flex mean? It means for muscle to shorten. It doesn't mean for it to lengthen. That's curious. I thought flexibility meant lengthability. No. I'm talking about flexibility, right? Getting the muscle to contract at maximal force. Because when I do that, guess what? It becomes 20 to 30% longer.
Yep.
Counterintuitive, right? So Vestersize really means bioenergetic self-transformational sequences. Okay. And I've spent the last 22 years, I learned a few from someone, and then I took it and I created hundreds of those. And once you implement those, now the whole system functions in a way that you can't even imagine, because your hearing gets better. Like me, if I close my eyes right now, I can hear my heart beating. Boom, 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 boom. 25 years ago, I couldn't hear my heart beating unless I just got done sprinting right? 800 meters as fast as I could. Okay. I can hear my heart beating.
Yeah.
Okay. My hearing, excellent. My sense of people, my ability to read their emotional state, what they need, my ability to meet them in their style of communication, my ability to be authentically self-expressed and regardless of the environment that I'm in. All these levels of intelligence keep rising inside of you. They get higher the more you open your body. There's so much inherent intelligence inside the human race that's gone undiscovered. Okay? Because we haven't been willing to acknowledge how important the body is, and we've isolated the mind as our major form of intelligence. The brain is only one organ. There's 15 other ones. Well, each one of those organs has as much intelligence as the brain, but it's a different form of intelligence. Here's the wonderful thing. We have a God that created a body. Okay? If a human created the body, we'd be stuck with just one form of intelligence, right? But you have a God that created the body. Do you think that someone would send you to earth, a God, like would send you to earth without being equipped with what you need already inside of you?
It's a beautiful concept, right? That there's this unleashed or not unleashed potential that we need to unleash. Yeah. So I think the listeners are going to have to probably listen to this one a couple times to absorb everything we've talked about here. I know we're short on time. We could keep going on forever probably, but I'd like to ask guests, Christopher, if there's anything that you wish I would have asked you that we didn't cover, and if so, what would be your answer?
What's the most important thing to understand when you're talking about human development?
Okay. Please answer the question. I'd like to know.
Yeah. The most important thing to understand is intent. And that intent is the driver for anything that happens. Like whenever you're looking around the world and you see a result, that result was created by someone's intent, whether it's harmful or it's helpful. Okay? So knowing that, well, if someone else can create an intent that would create harm, that means I can create an intent that would create health, ease, and grace. So I think the most important thing for anyone who's in health and wellness is to take 5 minutes, pull the chair up to a mirror, look inside of your own eyes, and ask yourself, why am I here? What do you need? And how can I help you? And connect to your soul to get your answers rather than your negatively conditioned personality. Connect to the inside of you and ask those deeper questions. And then once you have those answers, start setting clear intents around what it is you want to experience in relationship to the answers that came back from your soul. And if you're willing to spend 5 minutes, and I spent 2 hours 27 years ago, I spent 2 hours in front of a mirror and I got the help that I really needed. Okay? Because I was willing to ask myself those questions. And now I have a life where I'm in service continuously and every moment is magical.
Look at yourself in the mirror and ask, why am I here? What do you need? And how can I help you?
Yeah.
And then use intent to bring it to
drive those answers, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, let's leave it at that. I do want to ask you, Christopher, where people can learn about you and learn about your work.
You can go to truebodyintelligence.com. We're redoing the website in case you have some comments. Withhold those. And read the book I wrote. I mean, it's simple. Don't read the book. Listen to the book that I wrote. It's called Free for Life, a U.S. Navy SEAL's Unique Path to Inner Freedom and Outer Peace. And then if you want to get in contact with me, you always have to read the book first. Then you email my assistant at support@truebodyintelligence.com. And then she will set you up for a phone call. And if you decide like you'd like to learn from me as a student, or you'd like me to work with you privately, then I'm open to that conversation.
Excellent. And you suggested for your book, Free for Life, to get the audio book. Is it narrated by you?
Yes, it's narrated by me.
Well, people know your voice now, and hopefully they trust it, and they're like, okay, this will be a relaxing experience and an enlightening one as well. So, all right. Well, I will definitely include those in the show notes and give you all the love and the attention that comes out of this episode of sharing with the world. And hopefully people have taken a lot from this. I know I have. You've given me things to think about. And even the exercise at the end to go into the mirror and just do that is very helpful. So thank you. It's truly an honor and pleasure to have you on the show, Christopher.
Oh, dude, it was a pleasure to be here, man. You're very talented at what you do, and you're obviously passionate about helping people, and you care. And that came across from me the whole time.
Appreciate that.
So really thank you for inviting me to share with your Pete.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Wits and Weights. If you found value in today's episode and know someone else who's looking to level up their wits or weights, please take a moment to share this episode with them. And make sure to hit the follow button in your podcast platform right now to catch the next episode. Until then, stay strong.